Hey guys, my name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I thought I would do another Try a Chapter book tag. The reason for that is because I'm kind of feeling like slumpy at the moment with all the books that I'm currently reading. Also a little bit under the weather today, and I've been sick for like the last week almost. So I haven't really been able to film as much stuff as I would have liked to. I always feel like the Try a Chapter book tag is a really great way to experience a lot of different books and get a taste for the writing style and just dip your toes into a new book. So I do have 7 books. Let me show you those books. So the first one is going to be Mr. Nobody by Katherine Steadman. This one is a new, recently published adult thriller. The next one is going to be Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson, and this one was actually sent to me by Jocelyn because she's an amazing human being, and this was one of her favorite books from last year. So I'm really excited to read the first chapter of this one. Next up, I have Every Other Weekend by Abigail Johnson. I was actually sent an art copy of this one from the author, and this one is a young adult contemporary novel that just recently published. I think it came out like a week or 2 ago. The next one is going to be Reputation by Sarah Shepard. This one is another thriller kind of book, I think, and I don't really know too much about it, but I'm really interested in giving this one a shot because this is one that I would like to read at some point. The next one is going to be How to Walk Away by Kathryn Center. This is one that I just added on to my book of the month cart last month, and I'm hoping to enjoy this one because I really enjoyed the first book that I read from this author, Things You Save in a Fire. But we shall see about this one. I don't even really know what this one's about, so it'll be interesting to dive in. Another book that I want to read the first chapter for is Meg and Joe, and this one is actually a retelling of Little Women, which is really interesting, but I've never read Little Women, so I think it'll be even more interesting to see if I'm drawn into this story or not. I just know it follows a bunch of sisters, I think. And then the last book that I'm hoping to read the first chapter of, I don't actually own a physical copy of this one, so I'm going to be reading the first chapter of it off of iBooks, and that is Such a Fun Age. I originally heard about this book from Jacqueline, actually, and I had no idea what this book was, and then I heard it got selected for Reese Witherspoon's book club for the month of January, and so I'm really interested in giving this book a shot. I've been seeing a lot of really great reviews for this one. I don't know too much about that one either, so I just know that it's like, I think it's just an adult contemporary fiction kind of book, so really curious to read the first chapter for that one as well. I will see you once I have read some of these first chapters. Hello again. I have read the first chapter of 4 of the books that I mentioned earlier. I know it looks like a lot of time has passed, but the sun was actually going down when I filmed that first clip, so it hasn't been too long. But the first book that I picked up to try the first chapter was Such a Fun Age, and this book is really interesting. It had a really good first chapter, and I'm not totally 100% sure what this book is actually about, but this first chapter followed this woman who is a nanny for this family, and the family calls her up and they're like, we need you to come and take the kid like right now out of the house, whatever. So she goes to the house and like takes the little girl, and she goes to a grocery store. For some reason, this like white woman is like really uncomfortable by the fact that she's kind of like goofing off with one of her friends because the baby is white, and because Amira is a woman of color, I think the white woman kind of like freaks out and she asks the security guard to like go and check on them, whatever. And then the first chapter of this book is kind of like Amira's character being harassed by this freaking security guard in the store, and the situation just continues to get worse until Amira calls the girl's dad that she's babysitting or that she's nannying for, and she asks him to come down to the store and of course the dad is this like old white dude, so everything's fine once he gets there. But I really did like this first chapter though, and I feel like it's kind of like sad and heavy to read, but I do feel like I like what this book is doing and I like what this book has to say so far. I can't tell though if the next chapter is going to be from Amira's point of view or like if that was just a sneak peek into something else. Like, I don't really know, but I am definitely interested in continuing to read this one. I really like the writing style of this one, even though it is in this like third person point of view, which I don't really like, but for this book I think it works fine, and I'm really interested in continuing to read this one. The next book that I picked up and tried the first chapter for is How to Walk Away by Katherine Center, and this one had a really interesting action-packed first chapter. I didn't even really know what this book was about when I picked it up right now, but the first chapter was about this girl who is getting engaged to this guy that she's been dating for like 3 years. He took her up in an airplane because he just got his pilot license, or like he didn't actually get his pilot license yet, but he only had to like pass his final test to get it. And while they were in the sky, he like proposed to her, and then on the way back, the plane crashes when they're landing, and that's like pretty much the end of the first chapter, is like this crazy plane crash. She's saying at the end of the first chapter, like, nothing's ever gonna be the same and whatever, like, that's the moment that we died, but like, they didn't actually die, but I think she's saying their relationship died when they crashed. And I don't know, like, I am curious to read this one, but the major issue I have with this so far is Chip's character, which is her love interest, but I don't think he's actually going to be her love interest for the whole book, but the guy that's her fiance basically right now, he tells her in order to like get this job that's her dream job, he tells her to act like a man to get the job, which is like really annoying. And then she also kind of hides the fact from him that she's going to be making $50K more than he is with this new job because, you know, wouldn't want to threaten his very fragile masculinity. I am curious though to see where this one goes because I feel like this one might be one I love or hate, like I don't know. So I am curious though to continue reading this one. The next book I picked up was Meg and Joe, and this one is the one that's like the retelling of Little Women. This one was okay. I feel like I would have liked this more if I had known the story of Little Women, and this book had a prologue and then it had a first chapter, so it was a pretty long reading for these first couple of pages. I think it was like 20 pages worth. This story particularly focuses on the sisters Meg and Joe, even though I know there's like 4 sisters in the Little Women story. It was okay. Like the prologue was this like flashback scene of them on Christmas Day when they were like really wanting to spend Christmas with their dad, but their dad was actually in the war and he was able to call them and like talk to them, but like they were all depressed that they couldn't spend Christmas with their dad. And then in the first chapter it changes to present day when Joe is a food blogger in New York City. She like reviews restaurants and stuff, and then her sister Meg has 2 kids and they were just kind of like talking on the phone about their lives and stuff. And like this was fine. Like I don't really know like if this is just supposed to be like a contemporary fiction novel or like what, but this story was okay and I feel like I would have connected to it more if I had known the story of Little Women. So maybe I'll have to read this one after I become more familiar with Little Women. I don't know. And the most recent one that I just finished right now is Every Other Weekend by Abigail Johnson. This one is a young adult contemporary novel and it follows this girl, Jocelyn, who wants to be a director or she wants to work in film or something like that. And it just sounded really cute because it sounded like this book has that trope of 2 characters who are very like unhappy and then they find happiness in each other. And it does say on the back of this for fans of Morgan Matson and Casey West, which are both authors that I do enjoy. And this first chapter was pretty cute. It's really hard for me to judge YA books on the first chapter for some reason because all YA books kind of feel like they start the same to me. But it's like, it started from the guy's point of view, Adam's point of view, and he was kind of just being like a very like moody teenager about like not wanting to go and stay at his dad's house because his parents recently split and his dad got this new apartment and now he has to go and stay at his dad's apartment every other weekend. We do get a scene of him meeting the girl Jocelyn that I'm thinking lives like right next door to them in this new apartment, and so we had that. And like the first chapter was fine. Like I would definitely continue reading this if I do get in the mood for young adult. As you can see, this is the only young adult novel on this whole list of books that I'm reading because I'm just not super into young adult anymore for some reason. So if I do though get in the mood for young adult, this would definitely be something I would pick up. Alright, and the last 3 first chapters that I have to read are all of the thriller books. I saved them all for last, so let's do this! This book is called Reputation, and then right in the beginning of this it says, "Look what you made me do." Like, is it just me, or is Sarah Shepard a Taylor Swift fan? I mean, come on, the coincidence? Like, Look What You Made Me Do is the first single off of Taylor Swift's Reputation album. Like, what? It's pretty obvious. Some time has passed, and I have finished the first chapter of all of these thriller novels. First one I read was Reputation by Sarah Shepard, and I think it's safe to say that this author was very inspired by Taylor Swift's Reputation album when coming up with the theme of this book. I only say that because of the Look What You Made Me Do, but like, come on, what are the chances? I really liked this little like intro part to the book that has the title Look What You Made Me Do because she's talking about how important your reputation is and how easily it can get shattered and how it can like ruin your chances at a good life because people will always associate you with this bad reputation. And then the first chapter of this book ended up being like okay, to be honest. Like it was kind of forgettable, so like I don't know if I want to continue reading this, but I just realized too it said this is the author of Pretty Little Liars. So I don't know if that makes me more intrigued or less intrigued. But, you know, on the back here, Caroline Kepnes did blurb this, as well as Sarah Pekkanen, who wrote An Anonymous Girl. So, I mean, I'm still intrigued by this. It wasn't like the greatest first chapter, but I feel like this definitely has potential. And then the next one I read was the first chapter of Mr. Nobody by Katherine Steadman. This first chapter follows this dude who like washes up on the beach and he has no memory. He doesn't know who he is and what his name is, and that's why they call him Mr. Nobody. Get it? The first chapter of this was interesting enough, and I do feel like this one is a lot more interesting to me so far than Something in the Water, because I did try to get into Something in the Water. I tried reading the book and I tried listening to the audiobook, and I could not get into that book for the life of me, so I was kind of nervous jumping into this one because I thought it might be the same. And while I do think the writing style is definitely still, like, I don't know if it's my thing, I definitely feel like this story is really interesting so far. So if this one gets really good reviews, I might continue reading this one. And then the last first chapter I read was Never Have I Ever by Jocelyn Jackson, and luckily this one was actually the most intriguing to me out of all of these thrillers that I just read the first chapter of. And this first chapter was long. It was 24 freaking pages. But this first chapter was really interesting because it was about all these like moms who meet at their book club for the month or whatever, and then this new girl comes in and joins their book club, and she kind of like stirs the pot. She makes all the moms like drink a lot more than they usually would. Then she starts to play this game that's kind of like Never Have I Ever, but it's like an even worse version, because she just asks them like, what's the worst thing that you did today? And then when they all confess, then she says, what's the worst thing that you did this week? And then you keep going until you get to like, what's the worst thing you've ever done in your life? And everybody's like confessing their secrets and stuff. I don't know, it's really interesting, and that first chapter was long, but it was good, so that's good. And so I feel like this one is definitely the most intriguing out of the thrillers that I just read, so this one is definitely something that's on my radar and something that I would like to read really soon. Even though this book has deckled pages, which I really hate deckled pages, but it's fine because the story is what matters, right? Yeah. I feel like out of all of these stories that I just read, the ones I'm most likely to continue right away is that book, Such a Fun Age. I really liked the first chapter of that one. Also really liked the first chapter of Never Have I Ever. And I also did enjoy the first chapter of How to Walk Away. And I can see myself picking these books up right away, just based off their first chapters alone. But I am still interested in reading all of these books. Like, none of these first chapters like kind of put me off from reading the books. So that's always a good sign. Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you've read any of these books, please let me know, and what are your thoughts on them? Are these books that you enjoyed, or are these any books that you're looking forward to, and are they also on your TBRs? Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys soon with a new video.